we'll be going down to some of the basics of the transrectal ultrasound. We'll be discussing how to do a transrectal ultrasound and how to get a good result so that it becomes clinically useful and it really puts you at an advantage in your clinical practice vis-a-vis the diagnosis and interventions which we do. Okay, so for the transrectal ultrasound, basically we'll just divide up my talk into two portions, which is the diagnostic transrectal ultrasound and the trust biopsy. In the diagnostic ultrasound, well, the optimization of the image usually starts with the console which you are using, the probes which you are using. We need to have an understanding of these, how to conduct the procedure, what actually we are looking and how to make a report. And in the biopsy, we will consider how many cores to take, which portion of the prostate the cores to take, how to take a biopsy with the monoplanar end fire probe, and how to do a biopsy with the biplanar probe, because the monoplanar probe is the more commonly available probe as compared to the biplanar probe. Well, there are lots and lots of machines in the market, and this is a typical console. And when you are introduced to it for the first time, it appears such a confusing mass of buttons that it is a little bit intimidating of how to conduct the ultrasound based on so many toys. It looks like some kind of a spaceship or a console of a spaceship. But essentially, the main controls are common for all machines. There might be a slight variation of the locations of the various buttons and the number of the buttons which they are supposed to do, but the basic functionality remains the same. And if we just have just break it down into two portions, this is the keyboard. This is a keyboard which is there, which is going to be, which is basically a computer QWERTY keyboard is there with all the buttons and all the variations which a keyboard requires to input data into the machine. These are not really important, and I suppose everybody uses them almost on a daily basis when you're using a computer or even your cell phone. The other group of machine interactive buttons are these two groups of buttons. There's the trackball usually in the middle. The various kinds of trackballs might be there, mouse might be there. This is basically a mouse, and it is used to move the cursor left, right, and center, or adjust the value or size of the zoom box. And then you have a group of buttons which are there, which are the image optimizers on one side of the console, and on the other side you will have the color Doppler with these various measurements and all. We'll not be going into the details of the color Doppler, but I will be going into details of the image optimization over there. A third portion of the console is what is known as the TGC sliders. There's a bunch of sliders which are there between 8 to 10 in number, which are usually there in one portion of the console. These are called the time gain compensation sliders, and we'll talk about them subsequently and how to optimize the image using these things. So the probes are basically, there are two kinds of probes, the monoplanar probe and the multiplanar probes. The multiplanar probes are further of two types, the biplanar probe and the triplanar probe. This video is supposed to function. I'm not sure why it's not functioning. Okay, in any case, this is a monoplanar end fire probe, which you can see over here. This is a end fire. You can see the array over here in this probe, and you basically have to rotate this probe when you are doing the axial or the sagittal screening. This is a triplanar probe. The image is not very clear, but you can see this is the, yeah, now it's functioning. So this is the biplanar probe, and you can see this is an axial array, this is the sagittal array, and there is the end fire array. The monoplanar probe, you can see the tip is having the end fire array, and this is usually oriented in a particular axis, and rotation of the probe changes the axis, and that is what you will use to view the various parts of the prostate. So in relation to my finger, you can see the plane of the ultrasound changes as I rotate the probe or move the probe in various directions. And this is the property which we'll be using when we are going to be doing a transrectal ultrasound with a monoplanar plane. In the biplanar, you have the sagittal, you have the transverse array, and then you have the end fire array. And once you apply to the prostate or lemon, you just have to move the probe a little to the side, rotate it to the side for the sagittal array, and move it in and out so as to get a nice transverse or axial view. The end fire array requires turning of the probe and may cause discomfort at the anal canal. So the planes in which you are seeing are really important, and the plane will actually visualize for you the various anatomy of the prostate. Focus on this particular thing. If you are able to see only through this window, then you will be able to see only those areas which are appearing in this window. Supposing this window was to move onto this side, then you wouldn't be able to see these trees which are there on the roadside, and you have to move the plane back into this zone so that you can see the windows. So how do you do the image intensifier optimization? You have this B mode imaging, and then you have the time gain compensation. I'll just play you a short video on how to use the image optimization videos. The gain button is used to optimize the brightness of the image. You can see the image turning bright and dark, and this you can set it at an optimum value so as to get a good contrast of the image. The sizing button is used to increase or decrease the size of the image depending upon what you want to examine. And this is the time gain compensation curve. You can see in relation to the rest of the field, the particular areas of the field will become dark and will become light to increase contrast in a particular depth of the field. Well, you know what time gain compensation is. What happens is that when you have applied the probe when you applied the probe to the prostate or to any anatomy, some parts of the anatomy are deeper than the other parts, and the waves from that will return later compared to the superficial parts of the anatomy, and they will interfere in the waves which are returning from the superficial anatomy. So time gain compensation actually cancels out those deeper waves so as to make the image more clear. So this is how you would construct, would do a transrectal ultrasound. This is a table which you have put on the inside the examination room, which has to be a little bit of a private area. The patient is oriented in a left lateral position and is made in a slightly oblique form with his buttocks sticking out of the size of the table, so that you have a free hand to move once you are conducting the ultrasound. The probe should be well lubricated. I usually put a condom over the probe so as to keep it hygienic and keep it clean, and you can just dispose of the condom once you have used it. The perianal area is lubricated nicely. The patient is usually warned, and it's going to be an invasive experience for the patient. You have to be gentle, and you just insert the probe just like you put inside the finger during a transrectal examination. Once you put in the probe, the first thing which you are going to see is the anal canal. That's the anal canal right there. And as you push the probe deeper, the prostate appears, and you take the probe all the way inside till you see the seminal vesicle. And this is the starting point of the transrectal ultrasound. You fix one point, it can be the seminal vesicle, it can be anal canal, but you have to fix one point. The length of the prostate is scanned in the transverse of the axial view. So you examine it in the axial view, and then you rotate the probes in a way so that you can examine the areas on each side in the axial view individually. Thereafter, you can change into the sagittal view, and in the sagittal view, you will be able to see the entire length of the prostate. And in this, you examine the prostate from side to side. You examine the entire length of the prostate from the left to the right side. In the axial view, examine top to bottom, and you can note the meters, and you can note the intermeters, and you can use the sample scan. Sample scan is going to pathology. You can use on the doctor, you can see various possibilities. Once you have finished with the ultrasound, you feel the image, then you can do the most of the doctors will be having a nice this is how
Sir,
you would
Swapan, sir.
conduct. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. Your voice is crackling a lot. Probably
Okay.
there is an issue with the internet connection. If you can switch off the video, the speed would improve, sir.
Okay. How do I
I,
switch
I'll
off the video?
I'll do it from here, sir. I'll do it.
Okay.
Please go ahead, sir. Sorry to interrupt, sir.
So one of the important things which we need to know is what are you looking for? So the mind, eyes cannot see what the mind does not know. So see, you need to understand your prostate is not your transrectal ultrasound is not an MRI. Don't try to get a CT scans information from a transrectal ultrasound. It will give you very relative information, but very precise and important information. So you are looking at in a transrectal ultrasound for a diagnostic purpose, you are looking at only two parts of the anatomy. One is for the prostate and one is for the male infertility. Two pathologies you are looking at. If you are looking at the prostate, you are looking at benign enlargement of the prostate or prostate cancer or prostatic calculi or prostatic infections like the abscesses. And in male infertility, you are only looking for prostatic cysts and any signs of obstruction in the seminal vesicle. So we'll just go through these anatomies one by one. The benign hyperprostatic hyperplasia, typically you need to know the size. I think everybody is familiar with the length, height, and width, and the areas can be and we'll just go through these in the next slide. This is how a measurement is measured in
So
the
your voice is
sagittal.
crackling again.
Okay,
It was much clearer in between. Yeah,
is
better
it
now.
better now?
Better, sir. Better.
So this is how you measure the presumed circle area ratio. These are the indicator parameters. The presumed circle area ratio is actually the ratio of the area of the prostate compared to the area of the good idea about what's an important thing which you need to know as a basically there are 5 shapes of the prostate. This is from the flat prostate, or which is called the type 1 prostate, to the egg-shaped prostate, which is where the height of the prostate is more than the width of the prostate. And you can well imagine that these are non-obstructive prostates on the extreme left and highly obstructive prostates on the extreme right of the screen. You can use the transrectal ultrasound for the post-operative follow-up. This is a patient who has undergone holmium laser resection of the prostate, and you can see the vacant, the empty area once the adenoma has been removed, and similarly, size of the prostate of this patient returning to almost normal. It's a huge median lobe which was there, which has completely disappeared in the post-operative area. Coming to prostate cancer, what are you looking for the prostate cancer? Well, you are looking for only two things. One, where you are looking for a hypoechogenic nodule in the peripheral zone, and you are looking from where you want to biopsy the prostate. Why the hypoechoic lesion? 70% of the prostate cancers are hypoechoic in nature, about 25% are isoechoic. 75% of the prostate cancer is located in the peripheral zone. So a hypoechoic lesion in the peripheral zone is almost pathognomic of cancer. You have a hypoechoic lesion right there, and this is almost pathognomic of cancer. Of course, it helps if it is hypervascular on the Doppler, if the size is more than 1 centimeter, and if the PSA is elevated, definitely this is going to be a malignancy. This is how you can pick up malignancies. You are doing a transrectal ultrasound for some other pathology, maybe prostatic calculi, maybe for a benign enlargement of the prostate, and you find a hypoechoic nodule. Well, you got with an elevated PSA, you've probably got a prostate cancer on your hands. There are two other applications of transrectal ultrasound in prostate cancer. One is signs of extracapsular invasion. A broad contact between the tumor and the contour usually means that there is a capsular invasion. Yet usually the invasion starts somewhere around when the size of the tumor is about 8 millimeter contact length is there. And at 20 mm contact length, it's almost certain that there is a capsular invasion. Also, you can find telltale signs of seminal vesicle invasion can be there if the tumor is at the junction of the vas and the seminal vesicle. I'm not sure if you can make it out in your screens, but this is where it is abutting the junction of the vas and the seminal vesicle. Well, most likely it has invaded the seminal vesicle, or if there is a bulge at the prostatovesical junction, prostatoseminal vesicle angle, which is obscuring the angle, and the Mount Everest sign is not seen. Well, that means that there is probably a invasion of the seminal vesicle. Prostatic calculi are seen as hyperechoic lesions with distal echoic gastric shadowing are seen, and they are post-inflammatory. And if they are in the transition cell, probably it is an indicator of the corporal amylasia, and it correlates very well with chronic pelvic pain and recurrent UTI. Prostatitis is also commonly diagnosed on transrectal ultrasound. Usually hypoechoic areas are seen, and there are inhomogeneities are there alternating with hypoiso and hyperechoic areas. Another important area where TRUS is very, very important is the hypoechoic lesions, large hypoechoic lesions in diabetics or in febrile patients, or in febrile patients. And these are basically prostatic abscesses. And even you can put in an intervention and take out the pus, just put in a needle transrectally and just remove those things. In the male infertility, you are looking at prostatic cysts and seminal vesicle cysts. Of course, if the cysts are in the midline, they are more likely to be in the ejaculatory duct. If they are in the peripheral, they are more likely to be in the prostate. One of the important investigations is the hematospermia. In hematospermia, we find dilated seminal vesicles in more than 30–40% of the cases, and that means that the seminal vesicles are usually obstructed. There can be other anomalies of the ejaculatory ducts, calculi in the seminal vesicle, in the ejaculatory duct, and some remnants which can be diagnosed on the transrectal ultrasound. So whenever you are looking, whenever you are doing a transrectal ultrasound, be clear what you are looking for. You just cannot do a general transrectal ultrasound trying to find out what's wrong with the patient from your transrectal ultrasound. What you are doing is actually confirming your diagnosis on the transrectal ultrasound. Some things, how to improve your yield after biopsy. So in your yield, basically what you are looking for a process which gives you a very high cancer detection rate, which gives you very high grade concordance, which has a very low repeat biopsy rate and does not detect insignificant cancers. Based on that, the number of cores which you take, you can take 6 cores, you can take 12 cores, or you can take 12 or more cores. How many cores to take in localized CA prostate and how many cores to take in metastatic CA prostate? Well, in metastatic CA prostate, we are going for grade concordance, so we should take I advocate doing a transrectal ultrasound guided biopsy, even in metastatic CA prostate, to get a good grade concordance. So don't take out 1 or 2 cores and then send them for histopathology, find out it's Gleason 3 only to later find out that there was a Gleason 5 tumor later on, which is not responding to your conventional management. Where should the cores be located to get optimum output, whether into medial, within the peripheral zone or transition zone, medial, lateral, apical, or anterior? And what kind of biopsy you are doing? Is it an initial biopsy naive patient, or is it a repeat biopsy? If it is a repeat biopsy, whether you are doing it for active surveillance or whether you are doing it for after an earlier negative biopsy. Well, if we go at the number of cores, if we compare the extended and the sextant, the double sextant or the extended core 12 core biopsy, well, the biopsy has an increased cancer detection rate, decreases the rate of a repeat biopsy, has more accurate grade concordance, and does not increase the detection of significant cancer. So sextant biopsy is not recommended. It is recommended between the two. Extended sextant or the double sextant biopsy should be done. 12 core biopsy should be done. What about if you do more than 12 cores? Well, the cancer detection rate does not increase significantly. The chances of repeat biopsy remain the same, but there is better grade concordance and there is increased detection of insignificant cancer. Based on this, AUA has recommended that a 12-core extended biopsy protocol, double sextant protocol, has the best yield to benefit ratio. Where should the cores be located? Well, you know, as we talked about in the slide earlier, most of the cancers are located in the peripheral zone. This is what is known as a Punjabi Jyoti. You see this pink area here, the shoe is actually representative of the peripheral zone, and the foot itself is representative of the transition and the central zone. So if you biopsy from the apex, it is composed entirely of peripheral zone, gives you an increased CDR, and reduces the need for repeat biopsies, and it also predicts the apical disease, residual apical disease on radical resection. This is not true if you're doing a transition zone sampling, especially in the initial biopsy. You might do it in the repeat biopsy, but in the initial biopsy does not decrease the need for repeat biopsies if you do it in the initial portion. And of course, the far lateral zone is a good harvesting ground for cancers in the far lateral portion. So whenever you are doing a biopsy, it should be from the peripheral zones, and it should be through the entire location of the entire zone of the prostate. So this is a typical initial biopsy sampling location. So what happens when you're doing a repeat biopsy? The repeat biopsy, the previous biopsy is negative, which basically means you have a rising PSA. Then there is no point in biopsying from the previous tracks. You've already biopsied them, they were negative. So if you have kept a record of your biopsies, at our hospital, we keep a record of where we have biopsied from. We actually keep the videos, and we have a demonstration from where the biopsy is being taken. So there is no point in biopsying from the previous tracks. And the common site which you have missed is the anterior portion of the peripheral zone. I'll just show you in the following slide, and the transition zone. So you must focus on these two zones. If the previous biopsy was positive, which means you are using your recurrent biopsy protocol for active surveillance, then you have to use the previous tracks, and you should still include the anterior zone for sampling, because you know where the cancer is, and you just take a biopsy, just find out whether it has changed its grade or has it changed its volume in active surveillance. So this is a repeat biopsy sampling template for a previous negative biopsy, which means the PSA is still high, but the previous biopsy was negative. Instead of biopsying from the previous tracks, better to biopsy from the anterior horn. Can you see the anterior horn over here, and then the transition zone biopsy? A thing I'd like you to see in this slide and extrapolate it to the initial biopsy also. Whenever you are taking a biopsy in the longitudinal orientation, always a long piece of the peripheral zone is taken. The needle actually passes through a long portion of the peripheral zone. So this is how you will label your biopsies. The FL stands for far lateral, L stands for left. So the far lateral zone is here, the middle zone is here, and you can further divide it into the base and the middle zone. The apex is labeled as A1 or A2. Similarly, on the right hand side, you can follow another one where you can divide into base, middle, and apical zone. Base is labeled as B, B1 and B2. B1 is medial, B2 is lateral. Any particular labeling strategy you can follow, which is easily understood by the pathologist. This is a small video demonstrating how a monoplanar TVS probe, which is commonly available with all sonologists and all gynecologists. You can simply borrow it from your friend and you can use it. This is an ovum pickup guide. It usually attaches very nicely to the monoplanar and fire biopsy, and you can use it as a guide. It is usually in the same line as the array, as the end fire array, and once you put in a needle, it will appear on one side of the one side of the array, and you can use it to biopsy the prostate. So the problem is that the guide is on one side of the array, and if you have to biopsy from the other side, you simply rotate the probe to the other side, and then you can biopsy from the left side also. Now this was the right side, this is the left side, and you can just biopsy from the left side. Just rotate the probe, the image will flip, and you can take a biopsy from the other side. This is a biplanar biopsy probe. Just to get our basics right, when you are doing a biplanar biopsy, the needle will appear in front of the transverse and the sagittal array. You can see the orientation of the needle. But if you are using the end fire, just like the monoplanar end fire, it will appear to one side of the end fire array. It is appearing at one side of the end fire array. This is how you conduct a monoplanar biopsy. You are always going to do a monoplanar biopsy only in the axial section. You are not going to do it in the transition in the sagittal section. And you can see the needle is coming in. You have biopsied from the far lateral zone on the left side, and then you want to biopsy from the middle. The tracks usually become easily visible. If you can make out, see the tracks again on the video. and you have biopsied from the far lateral zone away from the transition zone in the peripheral zone also. You use these tracks. They are usually used as indicators in the subsequent needling. When you can do the mid zone first and then do the apex and the base, or you can start from the base and do the mid zone and the apex lateral. But usually you can use them as a good indicator of where you are located inside the prostate when you are biopsying. When you do a biopsy with a biplanar probe, you have a luxury of having actually two screens, and you are able to see the both the transverse array and the sagittal probe in the simultaneously when you are doing the thing. The biopsy guide actually appears. Have a look at the biopsy guide. This appears as a spot in the transverse array and shows the path of the needle, and the depth of the needle is seen in the sagittal array. So you see here it is right next to the prostate, and you can see the seminal vesicle over here. Just watch this area over here. The needle has come in, and now we are injecting the local anesthesia right next to the prostato seminal vesicle junction. And you can just slightly rotate the probe, and you can go to the other side, not like the monoplanar probe where you have to twist the probe 180 degrees. Here you just go in, move the probe a little, and you can put the path of the needle at the lateral side of the prostate. Thereafter, once you have given the anesthesia, it becomes a relatively easy technique. What you are going to do, you are going to focus on the peripheral zone in the base, apex, and mid zone. This is, you keep the needle point here, and then you biopsy and you focus on the depth over here. So then you withdraw, and then you see the two things. The needle point is here, and the depth of the needle you can see over here, and you can take the biopsies from. This is the apical biopsy you are taking finally, A2 and LA1. The biopsy has been taken. If you want more apical or anterior biopsies, then you have to use the end fire probe. This is the end fire probe of the triplanar probe. Similarly, without removing the probe we are using, and then you can biopsy from the, this is the biopsy guide which is appearing over here, and then you can biopsy directly from that point. I hope I could clear some of the basics to help you to clear, get a better endpoint